Everybody, welcome to Coffee with John. Looking forward to having coffee with Jon Ostenson. John, the last time we spoke, you're the CEO of a company that I was really impressed with last time we spoke. It was 3 years ago, almost kind of to the day. You're the CEO of FranBridge Consulting. Just a quick bio on you. You're the top 1% national franchise broker, non-food franchising. We're going to get into all of that. But where I want to start, which we talked about briefly as you kind of got here, the last time we spoke was, or at least when the episode aired, was June 13th, 2023. We probably we did it live actually. So that is the date. So that's 3 years ago. 3 years ago, ChatGPT wasn't a thing. So let's start there. How has your world changed since AI came into the picture? Because it wasn't even on the radar of our conversation.
It's certainly busier than ever before for all the reasons you would imagine. And
yeah.
It's interesting, back in 2023, we still had a little bit of COVID hangover, which, we don't say that word very much anymore. But, people took time to think about the path they were on. And a lot of people did start moving towards franchising. They said, hey, maybe that's a better path to business ownership. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I don't have that brilliant idea. So maybe makes sense to go the franchising route, at least for this next season. And yeah, certainly AI has only grown that significantly. I mean, we all read the headlines in the Wall Street Journal literally every 2 or 3 days about AI replacing jobs, and CEOs of multinational companies coming out being more and more bold about the headcount reductions in the coming years. And so many individuals are reaching out to us and saying, hey, either my job's not safe anymore, or I'm being asked to do more with less, or, hey, I feel like this is the pivot time. Let's dip our toe in the water and explore the opportunities out there.
So I think the next obvious question is, all right, so the last time we spoke 3 years ago, people were COVID hangover and the world was changing. People were working from home full time. Things have moved to hybrid and or back in the office. People realized that they wanted more freedom, quote unquote, balance. I'm not sure what that means. Right. So especially when you start your own business or start your own franchise, it's hard to have balance. But they wanted to be, I think, in charge of their own destiny and tap into that entrepreneurial spirit. Because AI wasn't even in the equation, there were many articles that were referencing that colleges were teaching adaptability because the world was changing. And there were studies that were showing that 85% of the jobs in 2030 won't exist. But it was just kind of floating out there. And then enter ChatGPT. And then as of recently, just Claude and Claude Coworker and Claude Code, which is, again, changing the game. So I would think if somebody is coming to you to start a franchise, one of the first questions would be, what is AI proof?
100%. No, you nailed it. AI resistancy is a huge topic these days. And of course, everyone's using AI now to evaluate the different franchise opportunities. But they want franchises that, utilize AI, things that won't be replaced by AI. So, think of the trades, for instance, home and property services. We see so much smart money flowing in there because they're saying, AI, at least in the foreseeable future, will never replace some of these tangible jobs. But what they want is companies that are going to utilize AI to innovate, because oftentimes these businesses operate in industries that are highly fragmented, less sophisticated competition. So if you're able to come in with more of a white collar approach to a blue collar industry, let's say, utilizing AI around lead generation, around routing, around back-end staffing augmentation, it really gives you a leg up.
Yeah. So give an example of a franchise or two that you think, and again, so much can change. So, sometimes somebody may be listening to this in 3 years, but I'm just time stamping it for the sake of discussion. We're talking April, May 2026. And so just tapping into your assumption set, right, based on current indicators and forecasting based on what we know of the world in this moment. What are 1, 2, or 3 franchises that someone would look and say, this is going to be around for sure for the next 5 years?
Yeah, just hitting on that theme of home and property services. I mean, we've had clients getting into things that I don't see AI replacing, things like pool cleaning, artificial turf installation, dumpsters, cabinets. There's so many niches within that massive property services space, restoration. But then it's other industries too. Like you look at the macro trend around seniors, right? I mean, people have been turning 65, 10,000 a day for many years now. And so it's not just in-home care, but other businesses that cater to the senior population. And we can certainly go down that path. I can get into some of those. But it's things that people are always going to spend on. I mean, they're always going to spend on their health, right? I mean, the longevity movement and different modalities that support that. They'll always spend on their kids, their pets. Then there's some B2B services. I'd say franchising tends to be a little more B2C oriented from a volume standpoint of opportunities. But at any given time, there's B2B services, everything from insurance adjusting to freight brokerage to hydraulic hoses, all these niches that you don't have on your bingo card when you hear the word franchise.
Yeah. I've seen some things online that, fast food places, some of them are becoming peopleless, right? Like, I mean, robots are making the food and serving the food, and the kiosk, you're ordering the food. From your, again, you're not a fortune teller, but 5 years from now, what's the fast food restaurants look like when we walk into them?
Right. Well, there are multiple reasons why we're not big fans of fast food to begin with, which we can talk about.
Right.
But
I know you're non-food,
right.
non-food franchises, but I'm curious your take on it because I know you are non-food. Yeah. That industry seems to be just changing like at the speed of light.
Absolutely. And when you think about the motivation behind wanting to have that in place, if you're an owner, I mean, you're dealing with, oftentimes kids that are long operating hours, and they're not dependable because of hourly employees. And so any way that you can find to get an edge there, and those are such repeatable processes, right? And you think about how you use Claude today with co-work, and you can create those skills, which is a repeatable process. I mean, food absolutely is that way. That's where some of these other industries, again, are a little more customizable, maybe out in the field, a little more nuanced.
So you're the CEO of FranBridge Consulting, and you help thousands of entrepreneurs and investors explore business ownership, and investment. So I want to kind of talk about the entrepreneur right now, because the investor can throw money at something and maybe lose it. And I'm making a couple, broad stroke assumptions right now. They look at it differently than an entrepreneur who it is their livelihood. So if someone is listening right now and thinking, whether it's a side thing or, have a business partner or just want to get out of corporate America, what are the characteristics that they really need to own about themselves in order to be successful buying a franchise? Because I just want to say this, and if you can layer this in, just because you buy a franchise, kind of, call it what you will, in a box, right? Here's the system, here's the process. It's still a lot of hard work. I mean, there's so many things that go into it, which we'll get into, but I really want to talk about the archetype, the DNA, the mindset of how that entrepreneur needs to show up and say, I got to tap into this potential within myself in order to show up as step one.
Yeah. And I'll never sugarcoat it. It takes a lot of hard work. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it, right? There's a reason why you can make outsized returns, and why the government incentivizes people to start businesses, from a tax playbook standpoint and such. So no, there's a lot that goes into it. With franchising, from a mindset standpoint, I mean, obviously you're getting the playbook, you're getting the franchisor who supports you on this, from the sidelines. You get a mastermind of other people living the same things day in, day out in that franchise system. Of course, there's a lot of synergies around buying capabilities and such. But end of the day, I've seen people that are great franchisees, and every now and then we'll see one that's not. Sometimes I can spot it early, and maybe they're too entrepreneurial and they question everything from day one. They want to put their thumbprints all over it. So what it comes down to is having a humility, being willing to follow someone else's system. And a good franchisor is still going to let you innovate and try new things. That's usually where the best ideas come from. But you have to go in with a degree of humility and say, there's a reason why I'm buying into this. Let's go execute against the playbook. Right. Secondly, you've got to be halfway decent with people. End of the day, it's business, right? You've got to be someone that people want to work with, work for. So really, those are the two biggest things.
Yeah. Let's talk about that with people. Let's talk about the dark side of business ownership. which I say the dark side jokingly, but the hardest part that I think people, I don't know if they go in eyes wide open or realize how difficult it will be if they've never owned a business or seen it from a lens. Employees, hiring, people showing up, people, not coming into work, the employee piece, I'm a business coach, and I have, a good handful of clients that own franchises, and their biggest headache are their employees, right? Not that they're not grateful for them, but, not showing up or showing up late, or, it's just the hiring, the firing, the training, the leveling them up. That is a very time consuming, but very fulfilling, very fulfilling. I've managed a lot of people in my careers, and I love it. But I don't think people sometimes realize the level of difficulty and time that takes when they buy a franchise.
Yeah, there's a reason why people come to us and say, "Hey, John, show us the opportunities to have the highest return on investment with the fewest number of people." Right? Those are the models.
Right. Well, and then you have all of these AI people saying, billion and trillion dollar businesses will be built today with 10 or less people, maybe even one person. Yeah.
And certainly franchising doesn't solve for all of that. End of the day, you're still the business owner. You're still making the hiring, firing decisions. You're still building a culture, building a team. But if you get the right people in place, the right general manager in place, let's say, one of the things a good franchisor provides is a little bit of the daily support water. They can carry the water for you. And I just see about half of our clients will put a manager in place day one to run the business while they keep their day job or what have you. It's what's called an executive model or semi-absentee. The key there, John, as you might imagine, is having a good person in that seat.
Well, I'll change that word to only great.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. Like, let's just talk about that. Jim Collins, his book is incredible, Good to Great. But it really is like, you can only hire great. I've been in situations working with clients where I've been part of the interview process to hire executives. And there was one instance where we put an offer out to someone after a long search. We didn't like the email back, and so we rescinded the offer because we felt like we were foreshadowing something that just wasn't a right fit. Talk about hiring great and then compromising to good with a hire, and what that does to the company.
I agree with you. Having an A player, especially in that key position, is everything. And just pointing to one of our clients that has done it really well is a small case study. Our client, Nathan, is the largest franchisee of 2 minute and truck moving service. Got into one location, started buying other franchisees' locations over time. He's up to about 12 locations, 45 million a year in revenue. One of the things that he does, John, is he's created an organization that attracts the right people, and then they have a proving ground where he can then elevate them over time. Every year or two, he'll come to me and say, "Hey, John, I've got this 27-year-old that's really worked hard for us, done a great job. I want to give him more opportunity. Let's go buy another franchise that he can then be on the cap table for and build equity himself." And he's just had a great track record of doing that.
Yeah.
So I think it's always that fine line of, when you find the right person, giving them the right level of support and responsibility, but showing them that upward mobility. And whether you open up the cap table and give them equity, or you give them incentive plans that act as equity, there are a lot of ways to go about it.
Yeah. You served as the president of an Inc. 500 franchise system, and now you're doing your own thing. What was the number one thing you learned in that corporate job?
Yeah, first off, I spent many years in the corporate world, like so many out there, and had thankful for that experience, but wanted to build my own thing. Didn't know what it looked like. And it was about 10 years ago that I stepped in as president of Shelf Genie franchise system. And for me, that was a big change, going from a public company to a private company, just from a day-to-day standpoint. But no, we built the team. And for me, it was a light bulb moment where I fell in love with the franchise industry, because I saw how all these diversified backgrounds coming together under a shared system of support that we were providing to them and allowing them to spread their wings and become business owners. So that's really where I fell in love with it, and said, hey, I see an opportunity on the consulting side to really it's around doing what I enjoy on a day-to-day basis, working with clients, being client facing, strategic, seeing new business models. But I also own franchises myself on the franchisee side. So I've kind of come at it from all angles.
You got all the lenses.
Good people running my franchises now, so I can spend much of my time helping clients.
we've talked about this a little bit. I just want to kind of dive into it one more time. What are the biggest concerns that people have when they come to you? So if somebody's listening right now thinking, God, this is something I would do, but where's the pain? Where's their fear start? Where's their fear? And how do you get them to either, say it's not for you or it is for you, but what is their biggest pain and fear points?
Yeah, it manifests in different ways. I think in most people, they have that desire to be a business owner. Most people out there, some lack the self-confidence. Some will point to reasons as to why the timing is not right. Candidly, the timing is never right. Like there's never going to be a perfect time. However, there's a difference between those that jump off the diving board and those that get up to the very end and then climb back down. And I see both play out all the time. But I think a lot of times it comes down to an inner fear, and it's, what if things don't go well? And is that my reputation, the impact on the family? But oftentimes what gets them comfortable is when they're going through the discovery process and they talk to multiple companies, they can compare and contrast and prioritize different characteristics they like in the business. But then they get to talk to other franchisees in the system before they ever decide to buy. That way they can hear from people with similar backgrounds, hear about their experiences. Sometimes that sways them to move forward. Sometimes it sways them not to. But the goal is to get them as much information as they're making an informed decision going in.
That's great. You're the author of a book, Non-Food Franchising. One or two things the reader is going to get from your book.
Yeah, packed a lot of content into 90 pages, and it's really been a great educational tool. Most people have read it by the time we get on the phone. But in it, we talk about not only franchising 101 and how the funding works, and I share case studies, but also we talk about franchising versus a startup, franchising versus entrepreneurship through acquisition. That's a big conversation. What are the trade-offs both ways? And so, people are much further down the path. It helps them connect the dots and understanding this world outside of food.
Yeah. And John, what I'm hearing you say is it sounds like the through line is doing your research, making sure you understand all the angles as a, business owner of a franchise, what it takes to show up, what it takes to make decisions, grow as a leader. I mean, all of those things. I mean, it's like any business, but I think initially sometimes people think, oh, franchise easy. But once you really realize there's nothing that's easy, doing the research to make sure that, you're picking obviously the right consultant to get you in the right franchise, to guide you. And then, all the work that needs to be done as now a business owner. So I think that's great. So, your track record is great. A mentor, sometime around the age of, 10 to 15 that, planted a seed that you still kind of, draw upon that energy today.
Yeah, I've had multiple coaches over the years that have definitely been inspiring, but Alan Young, who brought me into Shelf Genie 10 years ago, he was the founder of the company, and we stay in touch closely now. We actually started a franchise together about 6 years ago that is off to the races, 50 franchisees, about 130 territories. And he's the largest shareholder. I'm the second largest, but I'm supporting from the sidelines, and it's been a great run. So he's taught me a lot about the industry and inspired me to think big.
Yeah, that's great. So somebody who comes in, they get a franchise. Do they get one? Do they get two? Do they get three? Is the goal to get 50 like you talked about? What do you see with your clients?
About half of our clients will go with one location out of the gate. About half goes multi, and that could be 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, we've done as many as a little over 10. But typically, if it's more of a service-based franchise that's not a physical brick and mortar location, you're buying a territory at maybe 250,000 population, let's say. It's like Atlanta, where I am, would be 7 or 8 territories if you look at the metro area. But no, that's a very common path to grow. Another common path, John, is once you get in that franchise system, you get first line of sight into any franchisees that may be selling their businesses. So it's what I call internal M&A. But you can actually acquire other locations over time too and build your empire that way. I always tell people, think about what's right for the next season, what's going to provide that baseline to build off of. End of the day, you can still acquire companies down the road. You can still start companies, but what gives you that good foundation? And one last thing I wanted to mention on that, it's entirely free to work with us. So as far as doing research, you can research online, but every company's putting their best foot forward. Even the top 100 franchise lists that exist out there, it's a PR move, and companies are paying to be on that list. So that's where we come in to help you see behind the curtain. We've got the relationships, and we kind of see who the strong players really are.
And it's free to work with you because
We get a referral fee from the brands. We work with over 600 different franchise companies, part of the largest brokerage in the country. But none of that referral fee is passed on to our clients. It's very much like a real estate model. If you were going to buy a house, utilizing a real estate broker.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I mean, I enjoyed our conversation 3 years ago. It doesn't seem like 3 years ago, but to me, this is, I don't know how anybody would do it without a franchise consultant, right? Without guiding. There's so many questions that I think you need to ask anybody who's sitting across from you to make sure that you fit them into the right space. I think it's great. I think, are you seeing, what do you anticipate, your inflow, with AI and just people losing their jobs and, companies changing and maybe people not wanting to be part of corporate America? How does that show up in your numbers?
It's a great thing. I mean, it's a great time to be in franchising. We're seeing interest at an all-time high. If you look at, Google Analytics of, people searching for business ownership options or, the new startups, applications with the Census Bureau, what they report. I mean, we're seeing just through the roof, as you might imagine. And I think that's, people want to control their own destiny. Yeah. And it's not, in some cases they're running from something. In other cases, they're saying, hey, there may be an impetus behind it, but now's the time to, show my kids, that I'm taking a risk.
Yeah.
Now, I would say staying with an employer is a risk, but some people view business ownership as a risk.
No, there's a lot of truth to that, right? There's a lot of truth to that. I mean, if you're I've always looked at it as I'm going to invest in myself. That's a great investment. And so I hear you. I think that's great. All right, quick speed round. If you could have coffee with anybody living or dead, who would it be and why?
Gosh. Outside of my grandfathers, I'd have to say Jesus. I think that would be a fascinating conversation. Would love to do that.
What would you ask him? If you had one question, what would you ask him?
Yeah, well, I think I would know a lot of the ways that he would answer, but I think understanding maybe just why certain things are going on in the world today and kind of what the master plan is behind them.
All right. Yeah, I would love to know that answer too. Yeah, that would be great. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Yeah, this sounds very basic, but activity breeds activity. I believe getting off the couch, taking action. In my career, in my life, even going back to probably dating and college, what I found is instead of sitting there contemplating a decision, if you start moving towards option A or option B, option C oftentimes comes out of left field. So I believe things happen when you're in motion.
I agree. Book that's made a big impact on you?
Yeah, besides my own book, The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Again, it's not
you say The Compound Effect?
Compound Effect.
Oh, that's one of my favorite books. Darren Hardy is the man. Yeah.
Not rocket science, but the magic of compounding. I come back to that in my own investing as an example. And don't swing for the fences, in certain areas, but keep hitting doubles.
Yeah, I mean, that book is so good about just simple things that compound, over time. Was it Warren Buffett who said compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world, or Charlie Munger, one of those guys? Last question. One thing everybody can do to tap into their kind of inner being to decide if franchising is for them is to...
Yeah, easy first step. Come out to our website, FranBridgeConsulting.com. Share your email address. We'll send you a link to download our book, free copy, for all of your listeners. And then if you'd like to take a next step, I'd be happy to jump on a call. So we'll send my calendar link as well when you reach out.
Great. John, this has been great. I enjoyed our talk 3 years ago. I enjoyed it today. A couple of things just to kind of recap. Do your research. Find something that's in alignment, that is a great fit for you, because everything is hard work and activity. Great things come from activity. I have a second business. I'm a business coach, but I have a second business, and my business partner and we started out this one business and it was great, but then it morphed into something. And just by us meeting, we talk all the time, but we meet every Thursday at 7:30 in the morning for coffee. And what the original company was, it evolved to something, and it's called the Life Plan. And it's the counter to a business plan. Because we find that most people right now need a life plan and don't have it. They've got a fitness plan, this plan, and estate plan. They don't have a life plan. So we built a phenomenal business all from just constant activity and not knowing where kind of our conversations were going to lead. And it just led there. but I agree with you, and I see it in business too. Everything compounds. Coffee community, everything compounds. A penny that doubles every day for 30 days to be paid out by the 31st day is $10.7 million. But it isn't until about day 27 when it gets to the $600,000 range where things begin to take motion. And if you stop the small activities that are compounding, every time you stop and restart, it starts over. And so when you look at people, I always am amazed, like person A and person B. Person A plots consistently. Person B stops and goes. Person A, who's just doing simple things, they typically win. So I think it's great. John, tell people one more time where they can connect with you.
Yeah, come out to FranBridgeConsulting.com. And John, it's been a pleasure. Appreciate you having me back. And there's some great words of wisdom right there that you just shared. So I'm ready to run through a brick wall.
Well, thank you. And you can reach John where he said, and you can reach me, John Dwoskin, at johndwoskin.com. John, thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks, John.